The word casual, yeah. So let me talk about what I say with casual, because it's an easy word to say, but I'm talking about people who just run solo content. They do not raid. They do not PvP. They do not Mythic Plus. They do not do group content, period. Many folks might say, oh, those people don't matter. They don't even really play much of the game, which I would vehemently disagree. They definitely do play the game. They just don't play it in a way that you or I probably do. And that's why they don't really need to look at videos and other content and blah, blah, blah. And that's why you see content creators and streamers and such typically speak on behalf of the active audience who participate in social media and other such places, because more of them would show up here. Just earlier, I posted a video and I wanted to complain a little bit about something that I've been talking up for weeks, months. Yeah, pretty much 2 months or so. I've been talking this up, the whole idea of tier gear. Because I was left with the impression that, hey, look, dude, this tier stuff, anybody can get access to it. So PvPers, they just need to get PvP gear. They can transform that shit into tier. Awesome. Dungeon folk, they can take their gear, transform that into tier stuff. Also awesome. And it's very cool with what they're doing. If you have dungeon gear or mythic or PvP gear, how that stuff can upgrade with conquest or valor or whatever, if you wanted that stuff too. If you transform that stuff into tier and you could still upgrade it, though the ability to upgrade that gear still happens. At first I was like, okay, maybe it's a good idea if you upgrade that gear as much as you can and then turn it into tier with this creation catalyst thing, and you'll be able to enjoy that higher item level. No, you don't even have to do that. You could just immediately convert it if you want to, and then upgrade it from there. I think that's really, really awesome. Very cool. So that even applies to PvP gear. I like that, how PvP gear has when you're in PvP mode, the item level is increased by roughly 13 points or something like that. That follows too. So you'll have tier gear that gets stronger in PvP. That's fucking dope, right? Please clap. The problem that I have with the creation catalyst comes from so far, because I haven't completed testing it yet. And I made a kind of reaction, sort of feedback-y kind of video based on what I see. And from what I see so far, the only gear that can be converted into tier stuff is stuff that you get from season activities, PvP, Mythic Plus, dungeon stuff. We're able to test this a little bit because we can buy PvP gear on the PTR, and then we can go into this catalyst thing and be like, oh wow, hey, look at that. It works. Sweet. Awesome. Nothing else works though. Nothing else that I've collected throughout my testing, because I haven't thrown anything away, you know me. None of that stuff has worked. Now, this could be a PTR thing. It could be a test thing. Maybe the gear that I have presently won't work, but new gear that I get will work. But so far, that hasn't really panned out. I killed a couple rares, I got some stuff, and I haven't seen anything yet. And the fact that the PvP gear that I already had on hand did work tells me that, okay, maybe that sort of problem isn't a problem. The gear that is currently in my inventory or on my person still, it already works. And I think it sucks. There is one set of gear that I haven't been able to test yet because it's a pain in the ass to farm. It's a set of item level 246 gear, which is technically a little bit higher than Raid Finder. And that could possibly be converted into tier. So I might be wrong, but for now, I'm basing my feedback mostly on the tooltip and from what little testing that I'm able to observe, that casuals, world content isn't going to give you tier. And that really sucks because I feel like I've been leading people on. But at the same time, the messaging has been leading people on as well. There's a quote from November when this was first announced that, hey, You'll be able to take your gear from PvP and Mythic Plus and other End of Eternity's End activities, and you can turn that stuff into tier gear. So when they talk about, you know, other Eternity's End content, like we're not really talking about the raid, because the raid already drops tier. We already know that. But I'd figure that Eternity's End content meant, you know, stuff that comes out during Eternity's End, like the new zone. That's a big thing physically and all that. So for it to not be included is doo-doo. You know, some content creators would say it's a literal spit in our faces and blah blah blah. However, I have a pretty good feeling that the backlash to this is mostly going to come from me as a content creator. I have big doubts that you're going to hear a lot of pushback from like bigger content creators, because they typically try to capture more of the loud audience, and the loud audience is, you know, it includes people who do PvP. They include the big three. It's a very weird sort. It's not being hypocritical or anything, but there's just like different standards that are given to folks based on the things that they feel like they affect them. So the other month or so, I put out a video on flying based on my feedback, or, you know, based on what I'm seeing, based on whatever testing I'm able to do. Here's my take. I think the grind is like way too long. And then that shit blew up. I still haven't seen the reactions. It's not really important to me, but people were telling me that Asmongold watched it, and then Mike from Preach Gaming watched it, Michael from Bellular Gaming watched it, or, you know, whoever, and they echoed that among their followers and viewers, and so it kind of blew up, which is cool. Yay. And since then, Blizzard has changed that, which is great. You know, I kept saying something like, "Oh, they need to do something about the grind, blah blah blah," and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Let's just do a new achievement, and then here's how it works now." And now, there's still a bit of grumbling, but there's still a bit of grumbling over waiting to fly, but there is zero grumbling over the grind to fly, because there is none. You just do the campaign, and like that's it. That's okay. I have a feeling that this video will not take off, because this complaint affects mostly the very casual audience, people who just kind of poke around and want to enjoy cool things and blah blah blah. And there are some cool things to enjoy in the zone. You know, there's Cypher gear, there's Pokepoke, there's the Cypher of the first ones. There are things that can make your character feel good in that zone. But what about elsewhere, right? What else can players possibly enjoy? You know, there's the other zones. There's Torghast, if people want to do Torghast, and you know, people might slam on that, but it's still a thing to do for the casual person who just plays by themselves, just solo stuff. So not having access to tier don't feel good. I'm really hoping that like I haven't read chat yet. Don't worry. I will be chatting with you folks. I'm not just talking at you. I'm hoping that one of y'all are like, "Oh, actually, no, that's not true," or, you know, they fixed it, or they made a statement or some shit like that. So don't worry. I'll get to that. So I just wanted to finish my rant for a little bit, if y'all don't mind. I am fearful that the discourse over this particular thing is not going to take off, because the biggest creators don't care as much about the casual audience. They'll probably, you know, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of folks that are like, they don't need that gear. Casuals don't need tier. They never needed tier. They haven't needed tier since ever. This would have been the first time that casuals get gear. Why should they get it? There's no reason. They have this and this and this. They can't have all the nice things. If they want the nice things, they should raid, do PvP, Mythic Plus, yada yada yada. However, I shouldn't have to grind the zone to get flying. You know, I shouldn't have to do this. Yeah, I shouldn't have to grind Korthia to get high level conduits. I should be able to get it my own way too. And you know, so it's a very strange conversation where content creators and players, they'll look out for themselves, of course, and they'll look out for. It's like this is going to be very off-putting. So I apologize in advance, but I have no other way to word this. But I feel like content creators, they'll cater their most valuable audience is the active audience, the audience that actually watches their stuff or who would watch their stuff. And so how do you get them to click and view and respond and be active participants? Appeal to their needs. Most of the really diehard casual folks, they don't need to watch YouTube videos or look at guides or look at Wowhead. They just kind of get lost in the game and do their own shit. And so maybe this isn't going to be a big deal for them because they're just used to it. But I don't believe, you know, just like how gamers have changed over the years, I think so have they to a certain extent. And I think that they can have nice things too, and it shouldn't bother anyone. One of the worst takes that I hear in WoW discourse is, you know, the casuals shouldn't have the nice things. Why should they get it? They should step up. They should step it up and do like the good content. I don't want my accomplishments, you know, as a higher end player, I don't want my accomplishments to be diminished by the rabble, by, you know, these people who just kind of like poke around and stuff. But my counter to that is, why do you give a fuck? Who cares? Why do you care about people who are just trying to play video games on their own thing and they're not bothering you? It's not like they're trying to get into your Mythic Plus runs, because they don't do that. They're not trying to get into your raids because they don't do that. And if they did, you would know, because they'd have no idea what they're doing. And the most that would do is inconvenience you. It'd be a nuisance. It's like, oh, clearly this guy's got no experience doing this thing. He's like fully geared, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to bring him, which sucks, right? For that person. But all it does is inconvenience you. I'm gassed, so I will read chat now. Sorry guys. And, you know, disclaimer, like, y'all know that I raid and I do some Mythic Plus and all that stuff. I'm just trying to, you know, my empathy keeps turning towards those folks because it feels like they're forgotten, and it kind of sucks. So yeah, let's start reading chat. Let the catch up begin. So remember, I know I've been ranting, so I'm gonna reply to like I'm gonna reply to comments that react to older things that I say. So I apologize. The thing with casuals is that casuals don't consume, quote, advanced content of WoW. They come from work, they start WoW, they play for a few hours and then turn it off, play another game, and then don't think about WoW in any other capacity. They take the game as it comes and aren't hit by controversy or anything. That, by the way, are the players who mostly have unsubbed or now subbing for the first time in the whole of Shadowlands. It's funny, like the big drop off in Warlords. A lot of folks debate over why did so many people stop playing? OMG. Two things, in my opinion. One, the garrison was, I think the biggest thing that caused the big drop off during Warlords was that there wasn't anything to do beyond the garrison. Now, it was cool that the garrison was like a very self-sufficient thing. It pretty much turned WoW into a single-player game for world content. However, there was very little world content to do. The fun stuff was with raiding, and that was it, because Mythic Dungeons weren't even a thing until later in the expansion. So I think that more than anything, like caused the big population dip. Like their statements on, hey, we're not gonna have flying. I'm sure that caused a big dent too. But even then, it's like, okay, I can't fly. This is really lame. I'll just ground pound it. But then again, it's like, where am I gonna go? Am I gonna do like the one or two dailies that are out there? Am I gonna go out to Gorgron because there's so much activity there? Wait, no, there's not. Yeah, so to me, like that was a big thing. Unpopular opinion here, but I think accessibility sometimes hurts the game. There should be content for all types of play, but if you don't like ratings, sorry, you don't get tier and so on. Obviously, hot take, not fully developed thought. Now, I'm giving opinions here. You know, these are my strong beliefs. They're still opinions, though. They're indefensible. If you think I'm wrong, cool. As long as we can just make clear that we're trying to make these sorts of points, that's as far as it takes. I'm not trying to win people over. We're not trying to win arguments here. We're not going to do that. All we're going to do is dig our heels in even further. But as long as we can just kind of illuminate ourselves with, hey, here's me sharing my thoughts and ideas, and here's you sharing your thoughts and ideas, even though they're wrong. That's what we're trying to do here. So, Syncope says that's not a hot take. That's how most games are designed. Simple gameplay for casuals and deep gameplay and high rewards for those who stick around and play it for more than 1 hour a day. As a filthy casual, I get no access to tier sets. Why not? I get my ass handed in war mode already without item levels. Now they get superior buffs too. Great. Thanks. It's even needed for games because there has to be some kind of reward for being a deep player. Maybe they'll allow that gear to be converted into tier later in the patch. That's a very cool possibility. Casual here, but if we want tier, we need to raid. The gear we get from the content we do should be good for that. Like, why should you or we have access to tier if you don't participate in that content? It's like winning the lottery without buying a ticket. I could probably crush that analogy with some counter analogy. But even without that, there is, I think the best argument that I can think of to counter myself is that tier bonuses are designed for, tier bonuses, those are designed for like the content that you're doing, higher level shit. It's like a healer tier bonus. Does that really matter? I mean, I guess I would presume that most folks that just do world content and stuff, they probably don't run as a healer. It's probably as either a DPS or a tank for the most part. I'm just assuming though. But tier appearances, yeah, you don't get access to that. Casuals get shit on. You want to get in, you got to do that raid finder. You gotta step up. You gotta step out the box. And for some people, they don't want to step out the box. So they get less access to stuff. It's not just the sets anymore. It's the appearances too. And as far as I know, there is no way to get those appearances apart from group content or just waiting a long ass time before it becomes legacy content, which is fine too. But this is the stance that I'm taking for it. I've been playing since beta. I think tier sets are fun. Just a shame I can't commit to a raid schedule and I suck too much at PvP to get it low. The word casual, yeah. So let me talk about what I say with casual because it's an easy word to say, but I'm talking about people who just run solo content. They do not raid. They do not PvP. They do not Mythic Plus. They do not do group content, period. Many folks might say, oh, those people don't matter. They don't even really play much of the game, which I would vehemently disagree. They definitely do play the game. They just don't play it in a way that you or I probably do. And that's why they don't really need to look at videos and other content and blah, blah, blah. And that's why you see content creators and streamers and such typically speak on behalf of the active audience who participate in social media and other such places. Because more of them would show up here. I was genuinely excited to pump out tier for all my various characters. So was I. Yeah. Like, because I wasn't gonna give too much of a shit for my alts, but I think there's like a couple of appearances that I would have liked to have had, or if anything, try to unlock for like, to see if they possibly share transmog, which I think they don't, but I would try anyway. I appreciate your take, and I agree with it completely. I'm glad you stand up for us. Today, yes. No, typically I do. Like, I don't mind seeing just more happy players. I don't see why others should feel mad about it. You can't have a car only I can have a car because something, okay, another shit analogy. That was my bad. I'm going to walk that one back. Edit that out. So, also, I am interested in hearing your thoughts about LFR. What about LFR, Raid Finder, whatever you want to call it? I'm going to say I low-key loved PFA's Azurite gear for getting tier set bonuses on random gear without having to raid. Yeah, that was, now that I think about it, that was a nice workaround for it. There was a way for people who don't group to have something to play with. Now, I would also argue that 9.2 does give players something to play with like the Cypher gear and whatnot. The thing is, raiders and stuff, they get access to all of it. I want it all, and I want it now. Whatever. About why I care. The core of an RPG is accomplishing stuff and getting things others don't have. Whoa, is it? That's a very dubious claim already. The core of an MMORPG is accomplishing stuff and getting things others don't have. I'll finish the statement first. If everyone gets everything, it has no value at all. And you need to generate value for those who play your game longer, or else they stop putting in the time. I think in my survival guide, I poke fun at that too. I even, it's funny, I'm fighting for the creation catalyst to be available, to be usable for everyone, but I'm also going to talk shit about it because, come on, I'm not ignorant. Let's see. I think it took me a while to write this line. I'll spoil you for this one, and I'll try to read it in Laura's voice too. Excuse me. Check your volume, by the way. Tier sets are returning in this patch, and this time it won't be something for just raiders to obtain and enjoy while everyone else complains. All players will now have an opportunity to find and create sets. Tier will come from raid bosses, can show up on the Great Vault, and you can convert gear into tier pieces. All players can complain now because when everyone's special, no one is. So I'm conscious of that particular complaint. The response to that, though, is, why do you care? Or why should we care? I question that. It's a weird, it's a difficult mindset for me to capture because I'm one of those kinds of people who are super empathetic towards others. Like if I have tier stuff and I worked hard to get it, damn that RNG, right? But then other people get tier stuff and I feel like they didn't, am I supposed to feel like they didn't deserve it because they didn't work as hard as I did? Even though they just went down a different path. I'm probably going to get most, if not all my tier from just raid drops. But if someone else gets it from doing world content, should I be offended by it? If someone, actually let's cut the solo players out of it. Should I be offended that PvPers have access to tier now? Should I be offended that dungeon folk have access to tier now? Should I feel like raiding is no longer special because the gear that I thought was like super special, super precious to me, can now be obtained by other folks? So that sort of critique, Syncope, doesn't apply to just the casual audience, the solo whatever audience. It applies to all these other folks. So, I throw it back to you. Like, do you also feel like those people don't deserve it because they don't raid? I like the idea of some gear only being from certain places, and it encourages people to try and do content. I agree with. And I remember Ian has made statements similar to that, mostly with regards to the gearing discrepancies in PvP and Dungeons and Mythic Plus. That, the best players, they're going to find gear from all these different sources. Excuse me. They're going to find the best trinket from raids. They're gonna have mostly PvP gear because it scales up and so on and so forth. And they've tried to tackle that in certain ways. But there's been an ever constant discourse of I shouldn't have to go outside my box to get this thing that I want. Essences were a big deal with the discourse on that particular subject. It's like, I got a PvP to like get the essence that I want. Fuck that. I'm gonna be unoptimal, and that's a choice that we all make. So we can choose that, but most of the arguments for that were based on I want to be optimal. I want to have best in slot. That's the way to get it because the YouTuber told me so. I can't get it, so I'm mad, and that's a fine. That's a fine thought to have, and Blizzard has tried to avoid, extremes like that since one expansion ago, and so and now the discourse is different. Obviously, LFR exists though. Would people still have the problem with the exclusivity if you can't get stronger than LFR from normal from World Gear? I'm mostly talking in favor of people who just solo content and all that stuff. Now, this whole thing might be a result of me just having a lack of testing. Remember, there is a set that I haven't been able to test yet. It's called Sandworn. It's a gear that you can buy with this damn currency called Sandworn Relics. It's a big pain in the ass to farm, so slow that I still haven't really gotten around to like obtaining those pieces yet, because I'm like, okay, this is what the gear is, whatever. But now it also happens to be the only gear that I haven't tested for converting into tier sets. Now, if that is the way to get tier, great, sort of, but mostly great, because 246 is 239, if I recall correctly. That's Raid Finder item level. 246 is kind of a step up. 252 is normal, if I'm remembering these numbers correctly. And personally, I'd be fine with that. If solo players can get access to tier gear, although it's only like 246, to me that's not a big deal, because I think that's the highest item level that someone could get anyway, outside of the 2 legendaries, which are also going to be pretty accessible via solo content. That's fine, totally fine for me. I don't see why people who participate in the big 3 would see this as a big deal, because they're going to look at that and they'll be like, oh, they only get 246s? Yeah, whatever. It's all good. Fuck it. They can stay down there. That's a lot of item level. That's a huge item level difference. 246 sounds high right now, but then in the next season, we're going to know that that's a very big difference in performance if you can only get so many pieces. It basically the maximum item level of a solo player is going to be like a little bit under 250, between having mostly 246 pieces. The trinkets, I think I'm not quite sure what they can get, and then the 2 legendaries eventually. Yeah, that's based on just soul, and then maybe we'll like the world boss. Maybe they'll get like a little something from there. So like 250 or so will be their item level, whereas higher end players, they're going to be in like the 280s or so. It's a big difference. So I see like the whole gearing scheme there being pretty parallel. Like you're only in the most edge case of scenarios are you going to see raiders and dungeon folk and PvPers farming Sandworn Relics to get a 246 normal piece. Because they have plenty of opportunities to get better gear to convert. Is no group content really the hard line? The most that I do is like a +8 with my friend every once in a while for funsies. That's the extent of group participation. Yes, that is the line that I'm drawing, because I feel like, just a feeling, people who solo and all that they're treated like third-class citizens. They're treated like they're invisible. I don't think they're invisible. If anything, their visibility comes from probably the fewer players playing the game, because they're an audience to cater to. And Blizzard has taken strides with Covenant stuff, the Covenant Sanctum and stuff. To me, that's a big thing. A huge, the Covenant, like it's understated, but the Covenant Sanctum is like the biggest reward feature in WoW's history, straight up. There is so much shit to do there if you want to participate in that. And you can do that at your own time, all by your damn self. Have at it. There it is. It's there for until the game shuts down. Good luck, because it might take that long to get everything. No, not really, but it's going to take a long time to get all that shit. But to me, that was brilliant, because it's something that they introduced all in one release, but it's there for like ever. There's not a whole lot of time gating or any of that shit there, and people could just kind of have at it. Zereth Mortis, same thing. It's a zone that most people don't really need to participate in. Raiders, dungeons, PvPers, all they really need to do is complete the campaign, or progress through the campaign until some of this shit opens up, so they can fly, so they can get their double legendary, so they can get the memory to make the double legendary account wide, so they only have to work the rep once. They're catered to still, but yeah, solo players do get a lot, or they have gotten a lot in this expansion. I'll definitely give them that. But with tier, in this first introduction of giving tier back, I feel like solo players have been forgotten again, and they don't need to be. It's what made MMOs so popular for so long. It's a psychological thing. By the way, every game has this. Playing longer and deeper equates to better and special rewards. If you remove that from a game, it falls apart as a game. It's true. It's game design. Believe me, I learned that with game design training. I don't believe that tier falls under that paradigm, because tier, the way I see it at least, is basic shit. To me, that's low hanging. That should be low hanging fruit. The betterer, and special rewards, I would say, well, what falls under that? Trinkets fall under that. Just having straight up stronger gear falls under that. Imagine if we went back to a day where the WoW art team had infinite resources, infinite people, infinite time, and every tier set was different. Like, you had your LFR stuff look like basic bitch gear, and then normal, it looks a little bit better, and then heroic looks even better, and then mythic is like, oh my god, jizz in my pants, something like that. That's all that's needed, and that has nothing to do with power. That's all cosmetic. But then we would fit that sort of criteria. We're not even looking for that. We're just looking for having similar functionality, where there is obviously going to be a power difference between the item level and the straight skill of the player using that gear, who can maximize it, especially maximizing it in content where those tier sets get to shine. So giving solo players an opportunity to just have that, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I pity folks that feel offended that the rebel can get to my level. They're not at your level. You don't even see these people. You don't even see them. You might, like, to a top raider or whatever, like a solo player is just like an NPC, like, walking by, or someone that you'll walk by because they'll be fighting something, and then you'll just throw a judgment, and then wow, they explode in a symphony of loot or whatever. It devalues the accomplishment. I get that one, but I'll read the whole thing. It's like the participation trophy for sport events in schools controversy. It's human psychology. It's not about being offended. It's about investment. It's about investment should yield value, and only making easy quests and still getting the same rewards, which are not the same rewards, by the way, while others have to do harder content. and making special rewards for deeper activities is needed for a game to be appealing for long-time investing players, and PvP and instances are already higher content. The thing is, though, these are not the same rewards. That's it. They're not the same rewards. So that kind of falls apart. Let's see. To be honest, essences have made me dabble in PvP and never stopped after that. Yes, and that's fine, because that was the intent of that design with Azerite essences. It challenged players to go outside the box. You can either, when the going gets tough, maybe you give up. And some people did. And that's where you saw complaints. Sometimes it nets the right people. Other times it doesn't. And then you hear that being echoed in social media. Remember, this whole thing about getting gear and blah, 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 like what Syncope has been saying, I'm speaking mostly on behalf of like solo players, but this conversation has been existing among the big three. Or the big two, before it was raiders versus PvPers, and then now it's raiders versus PvPers versus dungeon people. So that conversation still exists. It's still there. It's just that now the big three, they're all getting their thing. Why are item levels and boss specific drops not enough of a difference? Yeah. I think Syncope was saying something about that. What is the difference between gear? Item level. Easily. I mostly do solo content, says Wolf and Hunt. I feel like I am just not good enough for Mythic Plus and Raid, so it doesn't bother me that I will never get highest item level. It's not like I needed it to do my solo stuff, which is very much agreeable. There are things that you get in, I was going to say Korthia, there are things that you get in Zereth Mortis that make you feel cool, and they only work in outdoor content. So it's a way for those folk to feel a little bit special. But everyone has access to that. And I feel like tier these days should be a part of that. Power is okay, Syncope says that's just numbers. The reward has to be something non-group content players don't have. Power is a thing that non-group players don't have, lol. Which is that's the ledge that I stand on. And we'll just probably agree to disagree on that. A hobby should not become the totality of a person's self-worth and self-esteem, though. That sounds like a bad coping mechanism to me. I mean, that exists. I mean, that's what a lot of social gaming is. That's why whenever we get like the dope drop, whenever Invincible drops, we link it on social media and people are like, yeah, grats, dude. Or like, oh, 700 runs and I still haven't gotten my thing. There's always going to be something like that. I just feel like that bar or that floor should now include tier set bonuses. That's it. Just include that. Like if they did the whole thing with tier set bonuses, but they didn't do zone buffs and stuff like that, that could be some equivalence. It wouldn't be a very even equivalence, but it'd be some sort of equivalence. You shouldn't have to knock others down to make yourself feel better. Yeah, that's mostly my take on it. Like, I think everyone can have, nice things. And the big thing is like not everyone. We're not stepping on each other's toes with this. What solo players do affects me, doesn't affect me at all. Except for there's no exception. But there are some folks out there, and I'm not assuming anything about everyone. We're just having these conversations about where some of these people stand. So I don't want to accuse no one of nothing. There are players out there that feel that those players need to stay down there. But at the same time, the players who are solo, they're like, we're not even asking for much, man. They're not asking to have a seat at the table, so to speak. They just want to enjoy some of those cool things that the game designers made. Some of those other things don't translate very well, like a certain trinket that does a thing that's really good for a certain fight, that probably doesn't translate well in outdoor content. Hell, tier bonuses might not translate very well in outdoor content. But between that and the appearances and stuff, I do think that that floor should go up a little bit.